More than 500,000 students live in California's rural areas, from the southern deserts to the agricultural heartland to the northern mountains. The challenges they face at home often spill over to school. Chronic absenteeism, high suspension rates, lack of college preparation, and limited access to technology. Trying to find solutions to those problems are teachers, counselors, and everyday local heroes. Together, they are working to improve the futures of young people who live in California's less traveled communities. In the most rural pockets of California, education is a lifeline. In Barstow, where students are pushing for a Cal State campus so they don't have to drive 130 miles round trip to earn a bachelor's degree. In Tulare County, where a school district installed Wi-Fi towers so students can access the internet at home to do homework. In Butte County, where local leaders search for absent students and personally make sure they get to class. And in Redding, where educators are trying to increase the number of students who qualify for four-year college.
There are folks who live on the fringes, and I don't mean that in terms of sort of socio-political fringes or socio-cultural fringes, but they legitimately live places where you can't get to. The cultural value isn't that they want to live away from others, but they want to live away from systems because they do not trust systems. When I think of the word absenteeism, to me it is an indicator of an unhealthy system and often a not equitable system. But if we think about why rural areas like ours have high rates of absenteeism, I look at the inability to separate, their experiences with the community as a whole, their experiences with education intergenerationally and familially, and their lack of trust of systems. I think of absenteeism as a symptom, just like I would a cough as a symptom of a flu.
The dirty little secret about rural America and in Paradise, there's the concept of the exclusionary practices that schools, well-intentioned, I'm sure, practiced that led to kids dropping out and not returning.
We have a really taxed behavioral health system. We have a few nonprofits that do the best they can, but we don't touch the need that children in this county have.
One of our frustrations as a student services department has been that a lot of resources historically available to us have been offered through a very urban lens. Through the rural lens, we know that we really have to provide access as opposed to the other way around. Instead of saying, here's the service, come and get it, we have to say, here's the service, how can we get it to you?
So we see a devastating fire that annihilates, 3 different communities. We know that we were already hurting for, school-based interventions for mental health. We were already hurting for how do we deal with high rates of suspension and expulsion? How do we deal with absenteeism? How do we deal with, growing sense of students feeling not a part of their system and their community? And the fires really just magnified that.
Both my parents were on drugs, so then my dad would go to jail for theft. So it would just be my mom and then her friends. So my parents would be too busy doing what they were doing that they wouldn't take me to school. Or if I would ride on the bus, they wouldn't be able to pick me up. So I'd be by myself in a random place.
At the beginning, I didn't know all the complications that Kaylee was going through. A lot of times, you can tell that there's things going on with people's families, and you don't ask per se, but the stories come out, especially when they do spend time feeling like when they take their downtime in your classroom, their stories will come out, and often we get in conversations about what's going on.
When my mom was sick, that's the only thing she wanted me to do. She made me like promise her like I would graduate, and so that's why I pushed so hard, because I felt like, oh, if I graduate, I'm making my mom proud. My sister got pregnant at 16. She dropped out, take care of her family. So did my other sister. My brothers just bought too much in high school and got kicked out and went to like jail. So for them, it would be harder.
And you were the youngest of
Yes.
7.
She seen me as like actually being able to make it. My niece had her children at like a young age. So while she was trying to finish school, I would stay home from school on the day she had school to watch her kids.
When dealing with chronically absent students, it feels a little impossible to know how to move forward with that student.
Sometimes I'd miss more than like a couple days a week. Other days I'd go for a week. So it just depended on what my family needed. I'd come back and we'd be on a different topic. So I'd just be like, well, I didn't finish the last topic, and then I'd feel like I was behind.
It's hard not to immediately judge that student and immediately judge that family. And the challenge is to have an open ear.
So when I think of chronic absenteeism, I think one of the most devastating pieces of it is if that's a child in a family who's already experiencing a sense of isolation, that we know when you talk about healthy development and you talk about healing from adversity of any kind, isolation, social isolation is the absolute worst thing.
When I was younger, it was a lot of me, and I wasn't asking for help, it was just a lot of me. And it took me a long time to ask for help. There'll be times I miss the bus and I'll like run frankly like door to door in Sterling. I'll be like, can you take me to school? Are you making it down the hill? Yeah, it was really hard, but I really wanted to go. There's a lot of things that go on in our family, but I seem to prevail it a lot. I don't know. I guess I just watch and learn. That's my thing, is to watch and learn, and to follow the right path until I see otherwise.
Kaylee's not an aberration. There are a lot of parents that aren't taking care of their children. I have probably about 3 to 5 students every year that I have under my wing with very similar situations.
The zero tolerance policies of the last 20, 25, almost 30 years did its level best to push students out of the system. And we excluded a lot of kids.
I have seen it over and over and over again, how easy it is to dismiss kids and families. Because if they are problematic when they come to school, there's a collective sigh of relief when they no longer come to school.
Our next work, is to make sure that those students see access to higher education and great jobs available to them, and also having a voice at the table. Students, the youth voice, families, really reaching out to all different families to bring them together to talk about the future of Paradise.
The solutions are going to be, I think, inextricably woven to our ability to be honest with what were the circumstances people lived and survived in before the fire. And can we seek to address some of those as we think about how to recover long term?
The community of Alpa is pretty small. We have 320 about 320 students here. All the kids in each classroom pretty much start from kindergarten and finish in high school together. So throughout their time together, they become close like family.
It's a pretty lost town, hard to find on the map. Sometimes you would tell somebody, oh, I live in Alpine, they would be like, where's that? You know, we always get that from everybody.
It is a very low socioeconomic, disadvantaged community. Our roads are very poorly maintained by the county. There's one store, we have one restaurant. Many of our residents are long-term residents. Kids will actually come back from their college experience and still live in Alpa because it's home to them.
Woodlake is a very rural community, a very farm-oriented town with a lot of Western hospitality. We're a very small community, and a lot of the students, their parents usually work in the fields, a lot of ranch management and just field work in general, and a lot of low-income paying jobs usually.
We're probably looking at about 8,000 in population. Generally, a high percentage of the population here is Hispanic. A lot of the students are bilingual, Spanish-speaking. It is small, it's tight-knit, everybody knows everybody. Something happens in Woodlake, everybody will know about it by the end of the day.
We're a one-to-one school, so in the morning, 6th through 12th grade, get to check out their Chromebooks from the library and take them to class with them. The reason that our students cannot take their Chromebooks home is because they don't have internet access, which defeats the purpose of us giving homework on Google Classroom or one of our ebooks.
It is a little challenging for us as teachers to assign any assignments that require internet use when it comes to researching, for example, a project, and they have to do research on their own. It is unfair to most of them to say, okay, you're going to be assigned this topic and it is due in 2 days. The challenge as well is the library, 2 days a week, that's all we get.
One of the main things we provide that is utilized is the internet, our access to the internet, a public computer. So it's become really important for our patrons to have access to that.
Internet here is very important. I know that now that I am working at the school because a lot of our homework, even when I was in high school, we had to do a lot of research papers. But of course, me coming from a low-income family, we never had internet. That never came to mind because that was more of a luxury to us.
The transition from textbook to computer-based learning, actually, I would say probably 10 plus years that transition has been taking place. And I would say just in the last 5 years, it really has become the norm.
Studying without internet at home makes everything hard because I still have to get internet access from my own hotspot, and I just get like 6 gigabytes each month. So, I mean, with the assignments, I don't have any social media. I had to get rid of that to be able to use all the internet on my assignments. So it's pretty hard to balance that thing out.
I would say the majority of the issue is we are so rural and there are no real close towns, and so it is costly to run the towers out here. Those who try and get internet out here, it's very weak.
Honestly, I've looked at installing internet here and then not including your monthly payments, that's where I think is our big problem, just installing it. I mean, do we have enough to do this just for the installation? It's gonna come to a point where we're gonna have to ask the principal, is it okay if we come use the Wi-Fi at the school? Because I see most of the kids do that. since they know the password, they're sitting in the parking lot on their phones or laptops or stuff doing their work because they don't have it at home.
We recently got Wi-Fi in all of our branches in Tulare County, Alpal being one of the, I think the original 10 that got Wi-Fi, because we realize that it is such a viable asset for people to have in this day and age. And in doing so, we hope that we can give all of these students a chance to get into a larger university or a community college at the very least, and do something in the future that they normally wouldn't be able to do without having access to the internet or a computer.
With the advent of devices and access to the internet, access to computer programs, educational programs, we noticed that students that did not have access to the internet at home were not able to participate in an equitable fashion with other students that did. So one of the things that we did as a district to close that gap is be able to provide all the students with devices and district-wide internet free of charge. That allows students to access resources that are only available on the internet. It provides students the opportunity to interact with schoolwork and assignments and projects with other students.
When Woodlake first started implementing like Chromebooks and stuff, it was very difficult because students like myself, I had to actually stay at the school and work on my projects there for hours on end just so that I could get it done. And other students, that was very commonplace for them too, especially since Woodlake's such a low-income community. With the at-home Wi-Fi, it just makes it so much easier to be able to access all of the internet and the resources, and we have our own Chromebooks that we're allowed to take home, which pretty much makes us accountable for all of our work.
The district needed to look into the infrastructure of what it would take. Towers were a big part of that so that they can transmit the signal. You know, the equipment and service providers organized all that and put it all together to what we have now. The whole expense of this whole infrastructure for the internet was, I mean, way over $500,000.
The community, we're not aware how this will be affecting our students on the long run. But again, our parents, you know, if anything, they've probably had little to no education. So it is just a norm for them to not have internet because they grew up not having internet.
My parents were immigrants that migrated here from Mexico, so they came here offering us a better life. So it's just almost out of respect for your parents to focus on your education and find something you're passionate about within your education so that you're able to really pursue that path and just fulfill these like dreams that were placed in front of you.
I mean, we push them to get to where we don't, you know, I've gone through it, my parents have gone through it. We want better for our kids, a lot better for our kids.
We still have a lot of work to do, but baby steps eventually will get us there. But the gap, I believe it's still pretty wide, and we as a community do need to work closer in order to, you know, make that happen. The school's not going to do it alone.
So when I first moved here, I thought, oh, this is simple. We'll just be able to offer all of our services online. And then you get out into some of these remote areas and you realize there is no broadband connection out there.
I used to laugh with a friend of mine from the Bay Area because her students could just get on a bus, drive like a half an hour and have a great field trip. Whereas for us, we have to get a bus, drive 2 or 3 hours, not be able to do as much in a day. So if we go to see UC Davis and Sac State and one day with travel, it's a very, very long day.
We were a very strong timber and mining area for many years, and then that all changed in the 80s and 90s. The region has really struggled to replace those blue-collar jobs and those employment opportunities.
Well, less than 20% of the adults in this community have a four-year degree. That also is hard for parents, some parents who never went to college to really understand why that's important. Students will hear, well, I never went to college and I did just fine.
Majority of our families are probably middle income but we do have a high number of foster youth in the area, and we have a high number of lower income people as well.
In our 5-county area of about 20,000 plus square miles, there is no public 4-year higher education institution. So our closest California State University system school is down in Chico. It's about a 75 mile drive from Redding. I refer to it as sort of an education semi-desert. We're not a full desert because we have Shasta College, but to receive that 4-year degree, there are more limited opportunities, especially in the public sector.
51% of our students are online. That's a very large amount of students who are taking, for whatever reason, whether they can't get here for transportation reasons or it's just work or family obligations, online works a little bit better for them in that sense. If they had an opportunity to go to a 4-year university here rather than having to either commute well over an hour, probably close to an hour and a half, to the nearest university, or move there, it would be life-changing. The region would grow, I think, exponentially.
Recently, over the past 3 years, I've been working with a team on North State Together, which is a grant that was funded through a local foundation.
They've really been working with the county initiative, so Reach Higher Shasta and Shasta County, Expect More Tehama in Tehama County, which is just south of Shasta County, who are all working on trying to help improve educational outcomes in their communities.
Within Shasta County, back in 2011, we began an initiative that's really a cradle to career initiative that was called Reach Higher Shasta. And our tagline for that has been every student, every option. And they only get there if they are taking a rigorous coursework throughout school, but that doesn't start at high school. We know that that has to start from kindergarten on.
You know, education is moving in a direction where a high school diploma is no longer going to cut it. The information that people are needing now to fill livable wage jobs is going to require at some form higher education, whether it's a vocational school, career technical education program, or a college degree.
Some of the career technical education programs have been very, I'll say, aggressive in developing those partnerships and working closely together to serve the students and make a more seamless transition here to Shasta College from the high schools. And so the example of a fire technology program through Foothill High School is a great example of that.
Right now I'm planning on finishing my ROP program. It's in fire public safety. By finishing that, I am eligible to be hired by CAL FIRE. And then I'm also planning on going to the Fire Academy at Shasta College so I can get the training there. I don't know if I'll need to, but I plan to anyways. After that, I'm not sure. A friend of mine wants to go to Oregon. I'm actually planning on going with her so I can work fires up there.
When you start talking with middle school kids about this idea of college, they're like, you know, how many more years of school, right? And that's not really appealing, but when you start to ask, what are you good at? What do you like to do? What interests you or intrigues you? And then to start to talk about careers that might allow them to use those interests or skills, and then talk about the schooling that would be necessary in order to achieve. And I think for parents, when they see their kids really interested in something, that helps to change the conversation.
I think the other part is really what I find in this area of isolation is, can I do it? I mean, it goes back to that self-confidence, that self-efficacy. Has someone spent the time to pour into me and say, I'm just as great and have the same potential as a student who comes from an elite school in Beverly Hills? I mean, I think that's ingrained even in the culture that they reside in their family. You know, only my parents know what's best, because even my parents' education and experience was just as limited.
I think that eliminating barriers is always a good first step to make sure that students do have access and equity
For example, the SAT, we're going to be giving it on our campus for the first time this year as opposed to a Saturday that you drive to. I think that for our students specifically in the Anderson area, that is a world that is so unknown to them. Many of our students haven't been out of Shasta County.
The counselors here work very, very hard and really understand their communities and the students that attend their high schools, and have lots of things set in place. And so along with being a counselor, they're going in and providing workshops and teaching all the things they need to do for admissions, whether or not you're A through G eligible, how to fill out your FAFSA, what kinds of information you're going to need. And it's very intentional, and each of the counselors are doing it at each of the Shasta County high schools.
The other thing that they've been doing is promoting dual enrollment, which has been a tremendous help to a lot of our students, in that they'll take a high school requirement at the same time they're receiving college credit for it. And so all that kind of together has delivered a better prepared student by the time they get to college.
So I heard of TRIO back in middle school, but I didn't really think it was going to help me out too much. And then it wasn't until halfway through my junior year when one of my friends here at New Tech told me about how they're going to be going down to Los Angeles and checking out UC Irvine, UC LA, and a few other schools based in the Los Angeles area. And once I heard about that, I was like, I need to join this program because I need to look at what college campuses are like, which one I'd want to go to.
With our support systems like TRIO, Upward Bound, and Gear Up, they have personnel that work directly with our own students as well to make sure that those students are receiving all supports available to eliminate barriers to college access.
I really want to go to UC Irvine because I feel like that's the best school for me, but my mom doesn't want me to go too far from home, so she wants me to go to UC Davis.
I think there's that fear because there are some economic barriers here with many of our families. It's not having access to your child. It's not like you're going to visit every weekend, and so am I going to see my child once a year? I also think that for many of them, there is a fear that they're going to outgrow their family and maybe never come home.
A part of me wants to go, be somewhere in like the LA or Sacramento area where there is a lot more diversity and I can start helping out, fellow Latinos and Hispanics that, want to go to college. But there is a small part of me that also is considering just coming back here and then maybe teaching here, even at this school even.
So you could say something like, we need to fix the equity gaps that we are seeing. If you're trying to fix that, there's almost like this embedded assumption that you're okay with it happening and now you're just going to fix it year after year. But if you come from the framework of we want to prevent that, we want to make sure that those students aren't dropping below in their success rates from an early on option, so there is not a problem to fix by the time they get to college.
What we know about education is what I believe is it's the great equalizer, and it elevates your health and your thinking and your healthy choices, and that can change generations.